No, there's nothing to me at all that feels divine about it or spiritual in any way. But I am also like a tech nerd, and I kind of look at everything through that lens.
When you have an engineer frame of reference, then sometimes you exclude divinity because you're only thinking about efficient costs. Let's do Elon Musk now. His view of religion is different than Sam Altman's.
So, as the saying goes, nature abhors a vacuum. So when you have essentially a decline in religion, an increase in the secular nature of society, for most people, they need something to fill that void.
Hello and welcome to What Would Jesus Tech? My name is Andrew Noble. I'm a PhD student at the University of Nottingham, and I'm joined with Joel Jacob, who is a principal product manager at, what's the company?
Cisco.
Splunk?
Cisco. Yeah.
It's like Splunk underneath the banner. It's like
The official name is
tech startup.
Splunk, a Cisco company. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. And then Austin, what's your job? Can you update us?
I
fully do that.
Yeah, so I am no longer the social media manager of the Gospel Coalition. I am now the director of youth at Redeemer Christian Church in Amarillo, Texas, aka my home church. Left TGC on great terms, have still a lot of great friendships and relationships over there, but the Lord called me back to a vocational ministry position, and I actually kind of resisted that for a little bit. I didn't want to leave TGC, but the Lord made it clear that no, this is what you're going to do, and so now that's what I'm doing. So for the first time in 10 years, I don't have a social media job, and honestly, I'm kind of loving it. It's pretty great.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine that. So let's continue our mini series, if you will. So we did this episode on demons and AI, and then we did an episode on psychedelics. And the underlying question to both of those episodes was, is there more than material? So in the demons episode, it's like, wait, is there really spiritual warfare that's happening? Are there really demons or ghosts or things in this world? And we said yes. And then when it came to psychedelics, again, it's like, is it just a mechanism within the brain that's doing weird neural pathway stuff? Or is there potentially something more, something demonic going on? And we were saying, yeah, it could be. And this gets at this fundamental question. And sometimes you've heard it listening to this podcast where we're like, oh yeah, Charles Taylor, secular age stuff. And that's what we need to get into, because this is really a fundamental question that changes how we approach so many questions today.
Yeah. For me, I'm just kind of like, why does it matter? As the kind of person who's on the outside almost of like, I've heard enchantment and stuff like that being spoken about. And I do see the tie to our previous episodes, but I'm really ready to maybe ask some hard questions on like, why should we spend time digging into this Taylor guy? What's his name?
Charles Taylor. He's a Canadian.
Okay. He is a Canadian. This is true.
And he kind of tells a story over 800 pages called A Secular Age.
Oh, wow.
And why don't we all read these 800 pages? And then Austin has his own opinions on this too. Austin, can you just like summarize 800 pages in a minute or two?
I can't, for one very important caveat that I need to get out of the way up front, is that I have not actually read A Secular Age proper. I have read numerous summaries and commentaries on A Secular Age from James K.A. Smith, Alan Noble, quite a few other guys. Like if you read anything from the conservative reformed evangelical space over the past 10 years, you've read summaries of Charles Taylor. You don't have to read the 800-page brick of a book to get his ideas. So full caveat, I have not read the primary sources on this. I own that up front.
I have, so I will keep you honest in case.
Okay. I appreciate that. I have read more than my fair share of summaries though, and have used many of those summaries in my own work on media ecology. So I've used a lot of James K. Smith stuff in particular. So I'm familiar with the distillation of it, which is what I think most people interface with before they decide to take the deep dive into the house brick of a book.
So what's the main concept? What's the big idea?
The big idea, at least for Taylor, and I want to explain the difference between Taylor as he originally was writing, and as I understand that, to how it's being currently applied. Because the way it's being currently applied is to something that Taylor, I don't think it goes super deep in on, but the application of Taylor in a lot of these conversations is with technology specifically, that our screen-driven, technologically driven age creates this buffer of sorts, this barrier of sorts, that we are so inundated with digital technology and digital screens that it creates this kind of materialistic shield that numbs us to the supernatural, that numbs us to anything beyond our immediate visible senses, because they're so tuned into the screens in front of us. That's the big argument in Alan Noble's genuinely phenomenal, still one of my all-time favorite books, Disruptive Witness. I should have grabbed a copy of that to show on camera because it's got the coolest cover ever. But that's his big argument, is that like technology is like really driving Charles Taylor's idea of a secular age, not in the sense of agnostic belief in God. His understanding of a secular age is that we live in a time where there are more options than ever before in human history about what you can believe, how you can live, how you can conceive of yourself, how you choose. And that can create this numbing effect to where you are so inwardly focused on yourself, your desires, your identity, who you want to be, that you cut yourself off from any awareness of the supernatural, from any awareness of the spiritual. The term that he uses for this is something called the buffered self. We create these individualistic buffered barriers of our identities, of our beliefs, of our behaviors that are self-selected, not chosen for us, but things that we choose ourselves that define us, that keep us from experiencing anything beyond ourselves, either with other people or creation or God himself. And the way that's being applied in a lot of the discourse and the TGC world and in Jason's fears is that technology is one of the biggest drivers of that. Smartphones and social media and streaming services, video games, fill in the blank. Those things are really putting a concrete shell around that buffered self, to where not only do you have a psychological barrier in terms of how you conceive of yourself, now you literally have a phone in your face the entire time. And so how do you break through that buffered self to get beyond the screen in front of you, beyond your understanding of yourself, to understanding yourself in relation to God and the world God has made?
Yeah. And that's a condition that we live in that's different than the conditions that people experienced 500 years ago. Because that's the driving question for Taylor, is kind of the question of why was it so much easier to believe in God 500 years ago, or 600 or 700, he kind of starts at that point, compared to today, when it feels like the default option is to question God.
Right.
James K. Smith has a line in his book. We're all Thomas now. We're all doubting, even as we believe.
Yeah.
We can't help but have this inherent bias against there being meaning from above, this transcendent thing. Like there's just something in us that naturally questions it that we can't get rid of, even if you're a Christian. And that was not true 600 years ago. It was
Right.
more natural to see meaning outside of you rather than meaning inside of you. So you can't have something like The Matrix, the movie The Matrix, where it's questioning, are we in reality right now? Ooh, kind of questioning that reality. You can't have The Matrix unless you, first of all, have this idea of individuals, autonomous, buffered, making meaning within themselves.
What you said is like, okay, yeah, we do feel like most people, the default is like, hey, default not belief. And I'm wrestling with, is technology partly to blame? Because I still, to use the word, get enchanted with like people who design technology that's so impressive that I'm like, wow. And for me, it even actually like points me to God to be like, okay, he created the laws and physics and stuff like that. So just wrestling with how much of it is, a person's natural disposition versus like how it actually affects our society.
The main thing that has driven a lot of the application of Charles Taylor when it comes to the technology and social media question, I think you could distinguish those two some. But the social media question in particular is that social media exposes us to more options for what we could be or what we could believe, or how we could even distinguish ourselves within a belief system. Like take Twitter, for example, or X, for example, and the massive upswing over the past several years of like inter-Protestant polemics between Anglicans and Presbyterians and Lutherans. And then you have guys like Redeemed Zoomer who are coming up, who are creating content on like, these are what all of the various denominations of Protestantism believe. This is what all of the major stems of Catholicism believe. Which one is right? How do you know which one is right? Are you picking the right one? It doesn't become a question of how does this make sense within an objective truth, but more of how do you know that you belong to the one true church? How do you belong that your denomination is the right one? It presents you with more options and then raises the question, how do you know that the choices you've made as far as what church you go to, what denomination you belong to, which branch of Christianity you belong to, is actually the right one? That's where the like, he calls it the Nova effect. This massive explosion of options here in the 20th century, where like you have more choices of what you can choose to believe, and it creates this kind of like analysis paralysis of like, there's so many options, I can't pick just one because what if I'm wrong?
Yeah. So I agree with that. Like I
do too.
I agree that technology creates a physical buffer, even kind of contrasting what we experience and what our lived experience is, which again is like more of something that you didn't talk about your lived experience in year 1080. You
Right.
had an experience and you thought about it in reference to the world. And like when John Calvin wrote his Institutes, he's like, you can't understand yourself unless you understand God, and vice versa. There's a relationship between the outer and the inner. And so the selfie, the self-focused, the tailored for you, the For You tab, even headphones, you can't sing your own tune unless you have a concept of a tune being your own and apart from other people's tunes. That doesn't happen unless we have these, because one of Taylor's things is just the individualism that comes about with where we are today. So the big thing that I think that this brings up is whether or not we believe in God. And I want to share with you guys some clips from, we don't have to do them all one after another, but we'll start with Sam Altman because his is most recent, just like 8 days ago, 1.6 million views on YouTube. He was interviewed by a guy named Tucker Carlson. I've never heard of that guy before.
I know Tucker.
Does he have political?
Very well. Oh yeah, he's a former Fox News primetime anchor who got fired as a result of the Dominion lawsuit against Fox News for Fox claiming that their machines were rigging the election, and they were found guilty of slanderous, libelous statements, and he was fired as a cause of that. But no, tremendously influential in American politics.
No, I think the Canadians are being sarcastic. We're not good at it. So
I just want to be clear, just in case anybody somehow, somewhere has never heard of Tucker Carlson.
It's true.
So here's Tucker Carlson's voice.
And I know that a lot of people in their experience of it reach that conclusion. There's something divine about this. There's something that's bigger than the sum total of the human inputs. And so they worship it. There's a spiritual component to it. Do you detect that? Have you ever felt that?
No, there's nothing to me at all that feels divine about it or spiritual in any way. But I'm also like a tech nerd, and I kind of look at everything through that lens.
So that's like the big quote right there. I am a tech nerd, so I look at everything through that lens. So that I'll play the rest of the clip where Tucker Carlson asks another question about whether or not Sam Altman's religious so that we can hear a little bit more context. But we'll come back to that. It's essentially his worldview that is, in Sam Altman's own words, words is because he's a tech nerd.
What are your spiritual views?
I'm Jewish, and I would say I have like a fairly traditional view of the world that way.
So you're religious. You believe in God?
I'm not like a literal, I'm not like a literalist on the Bible, but I'm not someone who says like I'm culturally Jewish. Like if you ask me, I would just say I'm Jewish.
But do you believe in God? Like, do you believe that there is a force larger than people, created the earth, set down a specific order for living, that there's an absolute morality attached that comes from that God?
I think probably like most other people, I'm somewhat confused on this, but I believe there is something bigger going on than, can be explained by physics, yes.
So
you get the idea. It's Sam Altman at his squirmy, whimsical best. How do you guys respond to Sam Altman's kind of dancing around the question and his tech nerd perspective?
I mean, I'm glad he didn't outright say he doesn't believe in God. I do think the Overton window has shifted a bit, where when I was growing up, I think the knowledge puffs up, right? So the whole like, hey, evolution and all of these things gave people so much like false confidence to be like, there is no God. And I do think we've come down from that mountain that we were on, and even him to say like, okay, like there might be some power. I was like, that's not what I expected him to say. I thought he was going to say there's no God. So I don't know, silver lining, I guess, but definitely he is squirming around, and I haven't seen another clip on that where he also like he's a interesting character. Yeah,
I'm impressed with his like you said, Joel. Like I'm impressed that he doesn't dance around the question, but I find the more interesting thing the disconnect between what Tucker Carlson was saying leading up to the question, that like, hey, the average ChatGPT user, or a lot of people that use ChatGPT, are recognizing something divine in this. And he says, no, it's a machine. There's nothing divine about this at all. And I think that contrast between how ordinary people are experiencing ChatGPT versus his own experience of it as a tech nerd, as a self-proclaimed tech nerd, is very interesting, because it shows that he's open to something being divine. He's open to there being something beyond the material frame, but he's not sensing that with his own product, or taking into account the fact that other people are sensing that.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting, maybe like two ways to look at it. One is, from a scientific point of view, literally, he's like, it's math, it's numbers, it's formulas, right? And I think like a typical, he was saying, tech nerd or whatever would be like, I can see that view. And I think maybe like a Christian enlightened view would be to say like, that's all true, but God is in that. Like God has made physics, God has created this world that we're living in. So there is a sense of supernatural and divinity and stuff like in a lot of things, right? When you look at nature, yes, it's carbon atoms, it's molecules, it's physics. It's like, that's all still true, but there is like a element of glory that comes out of that from God's creation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what Joel, you're articulating is the differences between causation. So some people talk about four causes, going back to like Plato and Aristotle. And basically what we have today is just to focus on the efficient cause, which is the thing that moves the other thing, rather than the ultimate cause or the ultimate purpose or of what things are for. So that things are for God's glory. It's like saying, okay, how does your daughter get fed? Well, food goes into their mouth. That's the efficient cause. But like someone loved the daughter, for the sake of that daughter to flourish. Like there's multiple causes at different levels. And so what Sam Altman is doing is even though he's can't help, and this was what Taylor talks about in the book sometimes, it's like, we can't help in modernity to feel like something's wrong, that we're missing out on some
Right.
super nature, and that there's this sense that if meaning is only inside of us, then what are we really living for? And I frankly became a Christian because of this phenomena in my own heart, that I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I should be doing something more than just getting things done. And it was only after reading Taylor's book that I realized, oh, I'm not unique in that. Meaning crisis is a thing everywhere, not just for Andrew Noble in a car in 2008, but this is a common experience to a lot of people in modernity or post-modernity or beyond modernity, whatever you call it. But there is this, when you have an engineer frame of reference, then sometimes you exclude divinity because you're only thinking about efficient cause.
Yeah.
And let's do Elon Musk now, because he pretty much says the exact kind of thing that I'm talking about here. But his view of religion is different than Sam Altman's. And again, shout out to Tucker Carlson for pressing these tech giants on questions about religion.
Part of it, I suppose, is sort of the decline of religion. So, as the saying goes, nature abhors a vacuum. So when you have essentially a decline in religion, an increase in the secular nature of society, for most people, they need something to fill that void. And so they adopt a religion. It's not called a religion, but effectively like woke, the woke mind virus. It takes the place of religion.
Yes.
And they internalize it and they feel it with religious fervor.
Yes.
And
rigidity.
Yes. And they essentially conduct like a holy war, effectively. It's just not called a religion, but it is a religion, sort of a woke holy war. And they're highly resistant to change, as is normal for religion. So, now for myself, I sort of see myself as an engineer, physicist. For me, I'm culturally Christian. I grew up Christian. I mean, I was Anglican, but baptized. I went to Sunday school. Actually, oddly enough, I was sent to Hebrew preschool and Anglican Sunday school at the same time. So it was Hava Nagila one day, Jesus Elo the next, which is, if you're 5 years old, it's fine. So, but I'm not Jewish. It's just that my father's two partners in his engineering firm they went to the same Hebrew preschool, and it was near our house, so I just got sent there. So, but I maybe this will make me even more amused, but I have trouble sort of believing all these stories, these religious stories, but a lot of people do, and I respect people who want to have religious views. I'm not trying to dissuade them from their religious views, but anyway, I'm just saying. I guess the operating system I have is a sort of a physics engineering operating system where I try to understand as much as possible about reality. In physics, you're not supposed to believe anything absolutely. You're supposed to question things. That's how you discover new physics. In engineering, that's how you discover if your machine will work or not work. Will the rocket get to orbit? If your rocket is designed with physics in mind correctly, it will get to orbit, and if it is not, it will not get to orbit, no matter what your belief system is. You can believe,
So, Elon Musk describing the efficient cause, describing, hey, according to physics, you can get to the moon. But my question for Elon Musk is why? Do we want to get to the moon? What is the ultimate purpose behind this? And in his own words, I have a what did he say? Mechanistic or physics operating system. He's describing his own way of life as, first of all, an operating system. So he's using vocabulary from the machine. And then he's reducing his view of the world to only from here to there, the efficient cause, rather than other than that. That is disenchantment right there. It is the buffered self. It is whatever. And it goes back to Austin's point earlier about there being multiple perspectives. So it's about beliefs. There's this huge distinction between belief and fact.
Yeah.
And he's living in an age that has believed in disenchantment. Whether or not the world is actually disenchanted is another question, but he is embodying the beliefs of what Taylor described.
Yeah, and I think you laid it down quite well. Like seeing those two clips, I can really see it, and I even have empathy for it because as a trained engineer, you kind of learn that if you just hope that things will go right, hope is not a consistent winning solution, right? And you get trained into being like, no, you need to figure out how to calculate it, how to be predictive. I remember he had another clip where he talked about he was running out of money for his rocket launches, and like on the third and last launch, he's like, he didn't really believe in God, but in that moment he prayed because there is just an element of like, we actually don't know how to do this. We are really trying to reach beyond our current understanding. And that's when, you often turn to God. And I think that threshold, pre-modern age was a lot lower where we're like, we don't know much at all. So everything was like, we just turn to God, So I can totally see, I don't know, maybe this is just like a natural inevitability of like mankind's progress on accumulating knowledge and moving into modernity.
Well, so one of the things that's interesting in terms of Charles Taylor's work and why it's so important is because he was the first to really put a nail in the coffin and kill the theory of the secular hypothesis.
Yes.
The secular hypothesis is this theory that as we become more wealthy, as we get out of poverty, we will rely on God less because we will have more material things and therefore we won't have a need for God. And what Taylor showed is that, well, there's like a hint of truth in it. He admits in terms of some things, like he's actually, that's why he's so well regarded, is because he's not willing to be simplistic on some of these things. But what he does across 800 pages is says there's so many more factors that are far more important that lead to a sense of God not being present. And that sense of God not being present is because of these conditions of belief. And these conditions in modernity have nothing to do with material success. It has nothing to do with prosperity. It has to do with the fact that you went to school like Elon Musk did, to a Christian school one day and a Jewish school the next. And when you're logging on social media and you see a Hindu priest and you go, well, I guess there's a lot of options on the table. And the distinction between what is out there and what is inside me all of a sudden becomes bigger. And you start to think about the world as being something that you can control and that you do have autonomy over. And that starts to build a habit in you of, well, maybe it is all about me and I am the center of the universe rather than there being a cosmos and meaning. And I'm going to follow the stars to direct me on where the savior is born or where I should go on holidays. Like we don't look out, we look within now. And that's because of these conditions. It's not because of our material success that people have given up on God. And Elon Musk even admits to that in that clip that we just played, when he says that people always have this religious impulse. And he uses woke and woke ideology as an example of the religious element in people that gets played out. And I would agree that Grace Hatanto has written recently on the sense of the divine, or sensus divitatis, or whatever the Latin is for it. And Herman Bavinck and his nephew, J.H. Bavinck, they were writing on this 100 years ago, saying, you can't get the need for religion out of man. We always will have it. and it's going to go somewhere or another. And the problem that I have with these tech leaders is they just end up acting out their self identity of engineer,
Yeah.
mechanist, materialism. It's too bad. They need metaphysics. They need the divine. They need transcendence. And sometimes they get there, like what you were saying, Joel, when they're in awe at the creation of technology. But even that should point towards God rather than just themselves.
Yeah. I think that people often say when they go into space and they see the Earth, that is one of those moments where you're like, oh my gosh, like, wow. So I think when technology allows you to reveal more of God's creation, reveal more of God, that's like really helpful. And when it kind of obscures that by making you create more of a buffered self, it's taking away. You said Steve Jobs had also kind of had a good quote. Is it falling in line with the other two, or is it a completely different take?
It's slightly unique. I'll just play it. And for the record here, this is not Steve Jobs talking, because Steve Jobs had a biography written by, let me pull
Walter
up.
Isaacson.
Yep, you got it. So it's like the go-to biography of Steve Jobs, and it's actually quoted in James K. Smith's summary of A Secular Age. And by the way, that summary is what Charles Taylor said. It's the book I wish I would have written, because it's so concise. It's less than 200 pages.
Yeah, it's like 100,
800 pages.
Yeah, it's dense, but it's really good.
So to do this clip, I got to play not just any clip. Let me click on it here. You've got an AI voice reading the clip of Steve Jobs.
It's sick.
Here is the AI reading of Steve Jobs' biography.
One sunny afternoon, when he wasn't feeling well, Jobs sat in the garden behind his house and reflected on death. He talked about his experiences in India almost 4 decades earlier, his study of Buddhism, and his views on reincarnation and spiritual transcendence. "I'm about 50-50 on believing in God," he said. "For most of my life, I've felt that there must be more to our existence than meets the eye." He admitted that, as he faced death, he might be overestimating the odds out of a desire to believe in an afterlife. "I like to think that something survives after you die," he said. "It's strange to think that you accumulate all this experience and maybe a little wisdom, and it just goes away. So I really want to believe that something survives, that maybe your consciousness endures." He fell silent for a very long time. "But on the other hand, perhaps it's like an on-off switch," he said. "Click, and you're gone." Then he paused again and smiled slightly. "Maybe that's why I never like to put on-off switches on Apple devices."
Someone needs to get Mr. Jobs a copy of the Book of Ecclesiastes. We're a bit too late for that, but
there's so much that could be said in that little section, and it's fitting that James K. Smith put it within his reading of Charles Taylor, because there is this sense of something missing. For Elon Musk, he talks about the woke virus filling the void, but just at this existential level. And to explain that existential need to have the answer resolved of what will happen when I die, what is life for, what's the point of gaining all this wisdom, is it all for nothing? This desire that Jobs clearly had of there being something more, you can't, if you just describe that purely based around, that's just neurons firing in my brain as a result of years of evolution, that I really don't actually have any thoughts that are my own. I'm just like a computer machine that's ones and zeros firing in between my ears. And now I'm having thoughts about why I need there to be an answer for an afterlife, because that's the programming in my brain. That's a not just a sad or nihilistic way of looking at yourself and the world. It's depraved. It's demonic. It's It's a way of entering into suffering by choosing a lie rather than the truth. That you were made in the image of God. You have a sense of the divine in you because you have the image of the divine in you. And we ought to, reach out and up to God rather than simply in and through these efficient means of daily life.
So I think this is, I guess I'm putting the pieces together now of like, okay, we are more disenchanted these days. And that's where
we feel more disenchanted. We feel more disenchanted.
Right. And
so
now
that's the key distinction that sometimes gets missed, is that the world is enchanted. God is everywhere. Demons are at work. Angels are at work. That's why AI is going off. That's why psychedelics are trippy, because there actually is real spiritual forces. The trees that you stare at, like the Bluey episode where the dad acts as if he was born yesterday, and then he gets taught by his kids different things about the world, and then he spends time at the end of the episode just looking at a leaf because he's like,
I never really looked. Yeah.
Because he's never really looked at a leaf. And then all of a sudden he's like, this is amazing. He's enchanted because the leaf is enchanted. It's alive. It has its being in God. It has its cause in God's glory. All things. So anyways, sorry, Joel.
No, I think that's good. I think it's really good context for people to think about. And I'm just trying to think about like, okay, so you probably read a bunch of theological writers, and they're saying we need to maybe do something to counter this cultural effect of feeling more disenchanted. And they're saying we should be more enchanted. But what practically are they saying should be done? I may have some technological ideas, but what are the theologians saying?
I mean, the primary people that engage on this subject, their go-to impulse, which is a fine impulse and one that I agree with, is to be less screen driven in terms of like technology where your primary interface is screens. So usually the focus is on like smartphones. Get that aspect of your life under control and don't let that dominate your life. Like, don't lay in bed at night doom scrolling for several hours. Don't have, social media or something playing on your phone all the time. Like, it's less of a technological question, more of a media question. But you can't cleanly separate those two things. It's less about this. And this actually gets to one of my criticisms of the way this conversation has played out, is that it's a largely negative vision. It's do less of this and very little proactive, like kind of like the Bluey episode was a great illustration of like what's a positive way to pursue this re-enchantment, this moving beyond this ability of disenchantment. Well, it's not just simply by subtraction. You can subtract screen time from your life and still feel just as disenchanted as you were before. That's not the only solution, but practically the way this conversation has largely played out, it has dovetailed really well with like reducing screen time, reducing social media intake, reducing entertainment, which is fine. Like as practical advice, yeah, you should do those things. But that's not the end of the story. You can't just have a negative vision of like, well, if you just subtract these things from your life, then all of a sudden the world will be enchanted. Like, no, there's another step there that you have to pursue.
I think like, it's so interesting. And this is kind of like one of the new shticks that I'm on and I'm telling all my friends about in conversations. And we've talked about it in past, like the Alpha School. If you remember, you haven't heard it on previous episodes. It's a school. The kids are scoring in the like top 1% of the country. They only do 2 hours of education a day in front of an AI screen that is like tracking and customizing the learning to them. And then they spend like, 6 hours or whatever the remainder of the day is on social, leadership, swimming, other activities. And I do think that at least paints a picture of like, it's not just about like getting less screens or even like less books, right, out of your face and more into like doing and engaging with others who are reflections of Christ, or nature, which is also a reflection, right? And like those things actually creating more opportunities to really build that connection that often gets missed. And probably the second aspect I do think is like, especially I said, I'd like empathy and sympathy even for like Elon Musk and Sam Altman and these like engineers of like, these people are like trained to think mechanistically. And it's like, how can we,
Right.
with our fellow engineers that are, this is going to need to keep developing, have them be more like Isaac Newton and these other scientific thinkers who do have a good view of God empowering everything that they're discovering and thinking. And I think we really need to bring that back into the techno builder world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there was a time around like the election of Trump most recently and the interplay between like JD Vance's religiosity and Elon Musk's techno-futurism that it always felt like something's not going to mesh here long term because the techno-futurism of Elon Musk is kind of devoid of God as a core to it.
Yeah.
And then you have and so they fizzled out obviously because you can't wrap those all under one banner. So I think there has been pushes toward re-enchanting the world. Like even Phil on our last episode talked about we need a biblical and Christian mysticism.
Yep.
That's necessary. And he even added on to that we can see that and experience it in ordinary life, that there are ordinary means of grace. So this is why I'd be okay, even though I'm a Baptist, of saying that, yeah, something happens during baptism of God's grace happening. You're not saved by the water of baptism, but you absolutely are receiving something from God through the sacraments, that there is something God does to you when you take of the bread and the cup. That is a spiritual experience, not just a material one that signifies something spiritual. So there is kind of the re-enchantment of Sunday mornings. There's the re-enchantment, at least the perspective that we ought to have of nature and going on more silent retreats or things like that. Like I've seen this go about in lots of different directions. But my big thing, like Joseph Minnick has been super helpful to me on this, and he's talked about it on a number of podcasts and has written about it. And he went through his own experience of doubt. He has a series of 10 YouTube videos on divine absence and the sense that God's absent and how to deal with that. And he talks about just starting with what is real around you. Like what is those experiences that you have with people in your family or your brother or your roommate, and those real experiences of human touch, human consciousness. When someone listens to you and they actually listen to you in conversation, they ask you a question, there's something real happening there. And yeah, I just think about that association and attending to the real as a way of fighting against the sense of God's absence, the sense of realness only being within. No, it's around you. Like take a second to look. But that doesn't answer the whole question. It's impossible to remove yourself from the water you swim in. We're going to swim in this secular age, no matter what. So just even understanding that we're in this kind of age, and the factors, the influences, the conditions of belief are kind of outside our control to a degree. There's something comforting about that story that Taylor shares, so that you make sense of the moment you live in.
And that's why I think, like, I'm a fan of Charles Taylor. I am. I really am, for the sole reason that when you read him, or rather you read the people that have distilled him, what he describes is just plain. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Basically, like once this clicks, it's very hard to unclick. So my issue with the enchantment discourse is not with Charles Taylor as it stands. I think he's brilliant. I think people have done a lot of great work taking his ideas and applying it to arguably the most important issue of our current present age, and that's just the increasing, overbearing encroachment of technology in our lives. My problem, though, with how this has played out, and the reason why I'm not a fan of this language the way I used to be is kind of what you were saying earlier, Andrew, is that angels exist, demons exist, the sovereignty of God exists. And what I fear has happened is that we never developed a biblical media ecology proper. I think Tony Reinke's the closest person to having done that with God technology in the Christian life. And so to fill that vacuum, we pulled from Neil Postman and Charles Taylor, who both have a lot of great things to say, but those have become the center of gravity for our thinking on this subject, while biblical concepts like the sovereignty of God and angels and demons and providence become these moons that orbit around Postman and Taylor that we occasionally give lip service to, but the driving impulse of our thinking here is this enchantment, disenchantment framework, or Postman's criticisms about technology and development of McLuhan's thought there. When if we were to invert that, and if we were to make a biblical media ecology the center of gravity and have Postman and Taylor orbiting around, they still have a lot of helpful things to say. But now conversations about the providence of God, the sovereignty of God, angels, demons, spiritual realities, those are the things that drive our conversations, not this extra biblical framework that we're trying to use to get at these very real spiritual realities in our lives.
No, that's well said. I have the book you just referenced, Tony Reinke's God, Technology, and the Christian Life. On page 145, he says, all technology should fix our awe and thanks on the creator. And you don't hear that in very
You don't hear that.
Books
You really
by
don't.
Christians about technology. It's like,
You really don't.
Wait, all technology? Because Reinke deals with the biblical text, and you have a number of passages like in the prophets where God is clearly over the plow. He's over the sword. He's over this. He's sovereign over all technology. So we need to see God working in all technology.
Yeah, I will say that was one of the first books I read when I was looking at like Christian books that talk about technology, and I was like, that's probably the best one. So for all the people who don't read much like me, that would be the one to get.
Yeah. I will be teaching a course at a local seminary in 3 months, and I will be teaching through this book. It's going to be one of the 2 main textbooks that I use.
Solid.
Because if you're going to choose a textbook to give to people who are trying to think well about technology in the Christian life, Tony Reinke's book is excellent in that regard. Anyways, we got to wrap up, guys, because it's coming up to time. But this was a very fun episode. We could talk about a million things more. Joel, do you have an automatic vacuum cleaner functioning in the background right now?
No.
What is it doing? I hear something.
Oh, you know what it is? Okay. I mean, the tangent is I added a glass door to my cabinet. I'm going to put a bunch of stuff in there. I used to have a lot of servers that made a lot of noise. Now that that door is closed, it's quieter here, and you're hearing the fans from my computer. So
that would be a fun YouTube series. Is you hear a noise and you have to guess what technology is making that noise. Is it a Roomba or is it a server?
As I say, the GPUs are screaming. So
this HD video call. So anyways, thank you for listening, Joel and Austin. It's always a pleasure. If you are listening along and you enjoyed this episode, we encourage you to support our team of Patreon supporters. And that money is going to go towards hiring a person to help edit episodes like this one, which do require editing work. I know this one will require editing work. But also there's just like a whole bunch of admin time that goes into downloading, uploading, filtering stuff through things so that there's not too much background noise. Speaking of background noise, and all that kind of stuff. So, and by the way, if you are interested in that role, it will be a paid role. The only paid job for What Would Jesus Tech will be not the 3 of us, but someone out there. So feel free to reach out to us if you're interested in supporting us as we hire an editor, and or support us by giving some money to Patreon so that we have more money to pay that individual. And otherwise, use tech, find rest, glorify God. Take care.
See ya.